packaging and packaging machinery at these Wisconsin-based companies, Kerwood, Hasten, and Millprint.
You take one bow, I turn to the band, and wham!
He had all of America tapping their feet to his music.
You could not compare Sousa with any one person. Sousa did it as no one had done it before, and really as no one will ever do it since.
Our nation's first music superstar. If You Knew Sousa, tonight on The American Experience. Major funding for this series is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the financial support of viewers like you.
Corporate funding for the American Experience is provided by Aetna. For more than 135 years, a part of the American Experience.
Good evening and welcome to the American Experience. I'm David McCullough. Once upon a time, Americans had a love affair with a portly little bandmaster named John Philip Sousa. His exuberance and patriotism, his joy in the possibilities of popular entertainment, his originality were all exactly in step with the times. What Johann Strauss did for the waltz, Sousa did for the march, and his rousing music was as unmistakably American as the strains of Strauss were Viennese. In 1889, the year of Sousa's first big hit, his famous Washington Post March, the national mood was upbeat and expansive as Oklahoma Territory opened to settlement, and a young American journalist named Nellie Bly circled the world in record time, just 72 days. By the 1890s, when the ever-productive Sousa was composing Hands Across the Sea, Liberty Bell, and the incomparable Stars and Stripes Forever, America had become the greatest industrial nation on earth. It was the time of the skyscraper and all new American innovation, of Thomas Edison, Admiral Dewey, and the rise of the irrepressible Theodore Roosevelt. Then, after 1900, with Roosevelt in the White House and a brand new century underway, it was as if the Sousa tempo and that of the nation were inseparable. Sousa marches, wrote a critic, are without doubt the most typical music which this country has yet produced, for they are deeply imbued with the American spirit. Sousa was the first of our composers to be taken seriously in Europe. He became a cultural export, and of course his music is as alive today as ever. He remains a national treasure. But who was John Philip Sousa? What was it about his music that so captured the heart of the nation? That's the story that follows. If You Knew Sousa.
September 1892, John Philip Sousa introduced his new band at a concert in Plainfield, New Jersey, and then took his players on the road to prolonged and fabulous success. Sousa's band was a concert band that almost never marched. At a Sousa concert, it was the audience that did the marching. Sousa pioneered the big road tour and made it pay. He took his band to every city and tank town where a railroad went. Each night he played his famous marches along with the music of Beethoven, Puccini, and Mendelssohn. He played Wagner's Parsifal in Grand Forks, North Dakota, 10 years before it was heard at the Metropolitan Opera House in New York. Sousa was America's first big-time musical superstar. His marches were the blockbuster hits of his day, and he became the best-known musician in the world, the March King. In real life, he was a quiet little man with a wry sense of humor and a genius for press agentry and showmanship. The people of America enjoyed a long and passionate love affair with band music, which climaxed just before World War I. Though the passions faded during the Depression, there are many who still live to the music of John Philip Sousa.
After that, I'll take those notes. Now, wait for a lot of applause. Wait for all that time. I'll turn around, give you the nod. Okay. That's it.
It was here, at the Marine Barracks in Washington, that John Philip Sousa heard music for the first time. His father was a trombone player in the Marine band. The elder Sousa was a Spanish sailor of Portuguese descent. He joined the Marine band in 1850. He marched in Lincoln's inaugural. He traveled with the president to Gettysburg to dedicate the cemetery there. Young Philip Sousa, as he was known, was brought here in 1867 by his father and enlisted in the Marines as a musician's boy. He was 13 years old. Sousa lived and worked in this environment for 38 years.
United States Marine Band, all present or accounted for.
I was born on the 6th of November, 1854, on G Street Southeast, near the old Christ Church, Washington, D.C., and would say, had I the opportunity to be born again, I would select the same parents, the same city, and the same time. My father was one of the loveliest men I ever knew. He was a scholar and a patriot. He knew everything except how to make a living. He used to say that the day was made for rest and the night for sleep, and he lived that with a consistency which few men attain in carrying out their ideals. Mother was a wonderful, fearless woman whose simple faith in goodness was eternally strong. She gave birth to 10 children and lived her life for them and for her husband. I suspect I was always her favorite.
As the son of a Marine band musician, he undoubtedly could hear this music at almost any time of the day. And like all small boys, I think he was attracted to it. I see this with my own children, and I see it with kids when we play concerts. I think that this music, march music, has something which is attractive to young children, and it probably made a deep impression on him. And I think as we all think about our own lives and the earliest memories, they are often some of the most profound and deep and meaningful things to us are the things we remember from our youth. Smells, certain dishes that our mother might have cooked for us, or certain experiences that we had. And I think this was something which was deeply rooted in Sousa, whether he knew it or not, whether he realized it or not, or whether he made a cognitive decision about it or not. I think that this was part of his consciousness from the time he was a baby.
Yes, absolutely wonderful, this thing, as a boy violinist. Sousa himself has said of his debut as a virtuoso, my first appearance in public was at the age of 11 when my teacher gave a concert at the United States Asylum for the Insane near Washington. This was his annual treat to the unfortunate inmates of the institution, and he had taken special care in teaching me a solo I was announced to play. And that picture, that is just absolutely, that's just...
I'd like to know where the original of that is. So you see how young he appears there? Compare with the picture on the wall here.
Boy, he must have been just about 26.
At 26, Sousa was appointed director of the Marine Band. His father persuaded the commandant that it would be a good idea. Sousa was the youngest ever to hold that position and the first to be born in America.
The end of his name is USA. And that's what he is, USA. And I love to go past his house where he was born. I've threatened someday to buy that house. And I so honored Susan. I thought he was such a great American that I went down to Congressional Cemetery and bought myself a grave. So when I die, I'll be buried near 26 steps from John Philip Sousa's grave. And the Marines played every year for his birthday. They put on there. So they'll be playing for me too.
Sousa directed the Marine Band for 12 years and served 5 presidents. His popularity in Washington was such that after he left the job, his successor was arrested and court-martialed for refusing to play a Sousa march.
I knew that he was absolutely fanatical about music because I would go to a movie with him, and instead of paying attention to what was happening in the movie, he was listening to the background music and singing the baritone part, and that didn't seem normal to me because other people didn't do that in the movies. He would take money that we didn't have to buy used Sousa records, and we never knew whether we were going to have enough food for the month, but he would, if he found a record, he had to have it.
I think the first time I heard Sousa, I was about 8 years old, and I heard the local high school band playing a march, and I thought, oh, wow, what was that? Our school closed down after I finished the 5th grade, no connection. And so I remembered that the school had an old wind-up Victrola that they played these marches that were written by this Sousa fellow. So a bunch of us kids, we broke into the school one day, and I got as far as Victrola, and I don't know what the others did. All I know is that I was listening to the Stars and Stripes Forever over and over again, and then suddenly I looked up and I saw a cop, and he was standing there. What in the bleep are you doing here? I said, well, I'm listening to some good music. He said, well, why didn't you run like all those other kids?
I can't imagine Paul's life without Sousa. It just wouldn't, it just couldn't be.
This is a day-by-day log of Sousa's life. To start out with day 1 of his life and end up with an account of his funeral and burial.
He kept saying to me, Mr. Sousa had all of these interesting titles. King Cotton, the fairest of the fair. And he kept saying, well, who was the fairest of the fair? Somebody someday is going to write an article that's going to, or write a book that's going to tell me all these things. He kept saying that. And he kept waiting for that book to come out. Little did I dream that he was going to be the one who was going to do that.
Paul Byerly printed a business card asking for help in tracking down Sousa's work, which was scattered all over the country. He found the Sousa Band's library at a high school in Illinois. He found 60 trunks full of sheet music on the dirt floor of a Florida college basement. A man on Long Island had the band's encore books. He found 85 volumes of press clippings. And in the back corner of a cellar in the Sousa home on Long Island, he personally rescued more than 20,000 pieces of music in Sousa's own handwriting. He learned that Sousa had published 3 novels, an autobiography, hundreds of songs, suites, and waltzes, 15 light operas, and 136 marches. Along the way, Paul Byerly found a number of people who are just as passionate about Sousa as he is.
We've got, here, the dog fight, he goes through and revises. I mean, he didn't even quite do it because he has the later one. He's got jump, boom, boom, and that was, well, maybe that's what he's doing. He's probably just notating the chords here, but he had the cornets hold that. You got more of the whole dog fight thing.
Yeah.
But you know, you don't see anything else. You don't see the trio anymore.
Sousa was walking around in downtown Washington, D.C., and the 2 owners of the newspaper, the Washington Post, approached him, and they said, we're having this essay contest down on the Smithsonian grounds. Do you think it'd be possible for you to write one of your marches, so we could have a special march, because this is going to be a real big deal? So I said, sure, I'll write you a march. We went home and wrote the Washington Post march. The Marine Band played a little concert, and then the children read their essays, and then there was this featured march on the program, the Washington Post March. When the festivities were all over, the band marched up to the Willard Hotel playing this new march, the Washington Post.
We think of these as marching pieces, but for many people this was dance music, and a very basic kind of popular dance music. Not something for the stage or some highfalutin stuff. This was something that people would dance to at home.
There was a convention of dancing masters that adopted the Washington Post March as sort of the official tune for their new dance they called the two-step. The two-step took America by storm. I mean, it killed the waltz. I mean, the two-step was everything at that time. And it got to the point that if you were dancing in a hall and you wanted to dance, you didn't say, play a two-step. You said, play a Washington Post. I mean, it was so synonymous with the dance that that's what you called it. You called it a Washington Post. Well, it was one of the first pieces recorded by the Marine Band with the Columbia recording studios here in Washington. One of the really first record companies in the whole United States. One of those old wax cylinders, a piece of beeswax is what it was. And they got the Marine Band to come down there, and they'd play into these horns all over the room. They played the Washington Post March, and those sold very well. I mean, the company made money because they had the Washington Post and these Sousa marches on their recordings. The publishers got hold of it, and they scored it for everything. I mean, you have mandolin and piano, you have two zithers and piano, every possible instrumental combination for it. So everyone was playing it in their house. You could listen to it on the phonograph, you could hear it in the parade, you could dance to it in the dance hall. You know, if you were a zither player, you and your wife would sit down, she'd accompany you on the piano, and you'd play the zither or the mandolin.
I remember what Dr. Frank Simon told me. Simon was Sousa's solo cornetist for many years. He said when he was a child growing up in Middletown, Ohio, he said, I couldn't walk down a city block but what I didn't hear a Sousa march being played on a piano from one of the houses.
Sousa's band finally got to Europe, there was great concern, particularly when he got to Germany, because the German audiences were supposedly very strict, and they had the tradition of Brahms and of Beethoven, all this really heavy music. So Sousa took a lot of time to get the best programs possible. They were printed in German, and it was all the really high-powered overtures and big spiels from the Wagner operas and things like that. They got into one of the first halls, like in Berlin or one of these other towns, and they finished this huge Siegfried Fantasy as the opening for this thing. A 15-minute work, a huge thing. And Sousa thought, he was really concerned about what the audience reaction was. And it was very good. I mean, they were very impressed with the band. And at that point, one of the people out in the audience stands up and he says, "Play the Washington Post." Yum-ba-dum, ba-dum. He went into the Washington Post, and they played that as the encore. Then they did another piece, like plantation songs from the American fields or something like that. And they played through it, and they had a lot of ragtime. The audience was like, yeah, they liked that a lot. And another person, "Play the Washington Post." All right? Bum-ba-dum. They played it again. It ended up the whole program. They played the whole program of these heavy numbers and Washington Post as an encore to each piece. It was his ticket. I mean, we always talk about Stars and Stripes being the real big, that his magnum opus. But the Washington Post opened more doors for Sousa than any piece he ever wrote.
Publisher Harry Coleman of Philadelphia paid Sousa $35 for the Washington Post, which included parts for band and orchestra. Coleman sold millions of copies and became rich, enough so that he bought 2 musical instrument companies. Nobody knows what Sousa did with the $35.
Sousa would soon earn more than $300,000 just for the sheet music for one march. Before we hear more of this distinctly American music, please take this opportunity to call the number on your screen and show your support for programs like this American Experience special on this public television station.
Don Sanford, and I'm here. We're taking a little break in the middle of this American Experience program about John Philip Sousa, one of my favorite composers, I might add. And someone just asked me, what did he do with the $35? Well, if he was around today, he could use that and become a member of the Friends of Wisconsin Public Television. That's right, for just $35, you too can become a member at our basic membership level. In a little bit, we'll tell you a little bit about some of the other levels here. But we're taking a break in the middle of the show to ask for your support. If American Experience and this kind of documentary, wonderful little story that's being told here tonight, if this is the kind of programming that is of interest to you and the kind of, you recognize that you just can't see this programming anywhere else, anywhere on the dial, then call right now, give us a vote of support, tell us this program is important to you and you'd like to help continue the tradition of programming you see on Wisconsin Public Television with a financial contribution to our organization here. Right now, Greg is here and he has some information on the thank you gifts that we have for you.
Thank you very much, Don. We have with us for the special incentives at the $70 level, either the CD or the cassette. At the $120 level, we have the Stars and Stripes Forever video, and that stars Clifton Webb. We also have, if you, at the $180 level, you get all three. Excuse me, the Stars and Stripes video and the CD, or the Stars and Stripes video and the cassette. Everyone is a winner because they do get the Airwaves magazine. And we ask you to take this time now, it's up to you, to help support public television. Wisconsin Public Television is to take a look at these things. And remember, Sousa is doing the marching. The band plays well, and I know everyone enjoys listening to the music. But we really do enjoy having you, the viewer, help support Wisconsin Public Television. And remember, it's a credit card incentive. We have these 2 magazines back here that are thrown in also, and that's Earth and Home Companion and the Farmer's 1993 Almanac. And now, here's Dave.
Thanks, Greg. Hi, I'm Dave Potratz, the announcer with Wisconsin Public Television and Wisconsin Public Radio. And we're kind of quiet here. We could use some activity. There's some activity. We like to hear the phone ring, and we like to hear it ring often. So why don't you go to your phone right now? You've been enjoying the program this afternoon. Does it make sense to show your support for programming like this and other programming that you watch day in, day out, week in, week out on Wisconsin Public Television? If so, pick up the phone. Make that important call and become a member. We have multiple levels, numerous levels that you can choose from. Perhaps a $360 level would be to your liking. Maybe 180. How about 120 or 70 or 35? And remember, with that $35 membership, of course, and all the way up, Airwaves comes your way every month to help increase your viewing pleasure on Wisconsin Public Television. On the right side of the card here, we show quarterly installments. At the $70 level, you might consider that, and that would be $17.50 per quarter. A lot of options. You make the choice, but please pick up the phone. Don?
Oh, thank you very much, Dave. You know, Sousa is something that is distinctly American. When you think of great American music, maybe you think of Copeland, but you probably got to think of Sousa. If you're here in Madison in the summertime, and you go to concerts on the square, you'll always hear a little Sousa thrown in here someplace. Look, we think that not only is Sousa distinctly American, but we think Wisconsin Public Television is distinctly Wisconsin. It's the only place, Wisconsin Public Television is the only broadcast service that brings the people and the issues of the state of Wisconsin to everyone. We cover the state talking about current events, arts, leisure, entertainment, things that are going on that are important to everybody in the state. And Wisconsin Public Television is the only service where you can see this kind of information. It's a distinctly Wisconsin service. So call us right now, make a pledge of support. Become a supporter of Wisconsin Public Television. Help keep bringing great programs like American Experience or the Mark Russell Comedy Specials or Sewing with Nancy or Weekend or any of the other wonderful shows that you just can't see anywhere else. You can become a partner with us in the programming that we bring to you, just like the Wisconsin State Journal was last year during our election coverage. Become a partner with Wisconsin Public Television. Call us right now, make a contribution, make a financial pledge. Our volunteers are here, ready and waiting to take your call. Dave? Oh, where's Dave? Dave?
Oh, I'm here. Way back here. Hi, how are you doing? I'm here with Dorothy Avendroth of the Madison Area Retired Educators Association. And Dorothy, you sounds like you've been a volunteer here for a number of years.
Oh, yes. We have been here before, and we had such a good time, and we're so enthusiastic about public television that we volunteered to come again.
That's excellent. You know, it's very important, the volunteers that we have here that are ready to take your call. A lot of them are busy right now, but there are a few phones open as well, so you can call in right now. Dorothy, what's your favorite program on Wisconsin Public Television?
Mine is Masterpiece Theater, of course, and then the news coverage is good. The McNeil Lair. Yes, and several others. I even watch Are You Being Served?
An excellent program, relatively new on public television. Yes, an excellent program. Once again, these fine people are here to take your calls. Dorothy is here. Well, we won't let her take a call right now, but as soon as I leave, she'll be able to take a call. The important thing is to pick up that phone and make this commitment to Wisconsin Public Television. We're your source of not only education, information, and entertainment, but we're here day in, day out, week in, week out, the whole year round. Greg?
Thank you very much, Dave. As Dorothy said, she enjoyed some of the programming. We are a team here. And Wisconsin Public Television does best with your support. Why don't you join our team and keep your favorites on TV? We need each and every one of you as a member. If we want to guarantee high-quality programs, Wisconsin Public Television belongs to all and needs to have you. We need to have your phone calls. We just heard a phone ring again. Let's make these people really get busy and have this phone ring off the hook. We know you're doing a little Christmas shopping, but at the same time, take a break right now and pick up the phone and call Wisconsin Public Television. Remember, it's you the member out there that we need to have make this work. And also, as a result of that, here are some of the premiums that we do offer as a result of that. We've got the Stars and Stripes Forever video. We've also got CD, but now, here's Don.
Well, thank you very much, Greg. When you do call and make a pledge of support to Wisconsin Public Television, you're joining us in our fun-filled activities we're having here. Also joining us have been a number of businesses that have donated food to us, and they are Appliances Unlimited, Badger Popcorn, Chi-Chi's Mexican Restaurant, Irish Waters Public House, Lakeland Distributing Company, Lamer's Bus Lines in Green Bay, Madison Coffee and Vending, Pepsi-Cola Bottling Company, Perkins Restaurant and Bakery on University Ave in Madison, and AJ Sweet of Madison. Thank you very much for your support of food and goodies for us. We certainly have ground through a lot of these yummy things today. But what's important right now that I want to ask you for, these people have made their contribution. They've helped us. They've made their support. But why now it's your turn. Why not go to the phone right now, tell us you care about the programs you see in Wisconsin Public Television, and make a pledge of support. Dave?
Thank you, Don. Yes, once again, and you have an option. You have a number of options as to how you choose to become a member of Wisconsin Public Television. We call them our membership levels, and we were talking about them just a few minutes ago. But the point that I was going to make at that time, and I'll make now, is that these are suggested levels. But if there's something that you would feel more comfortable with, something in between one of these levels, or maybe a little bit higher if you're predisposed, you can go ahead and make that choice as well. You choose the level. Pick a level, but the important thing is to pick up the phone, and a lot of people have done so, and we thank you very much for your calls during this break. We'll be getting back to the Sousa program in just a few minutes, more entertainment, and we have Lawrence Welk coming up this evening as well, so stay with us. But right now, it's a good time to go to the phone, pick it up, and become a member of Wisconsin Public Television. We have over 2,000 volunteers that help out with various activities over the year. And you can be a volunteer, if you will, as well, by volunteering your support. Now back to Don and Greg.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. Well, we're here. Let me tell you a little bit about the premiums. You still have about a minute left, plenty of time to go to your phone and make a call. When you call at the $70 level, you get
Stars and Stripes Forever, starring Clifton Webb.
What a great film. What a great film. When you call at the $120 level, you get, when you call the $70 level, you get the Heritage Band CD or cassette. When you call, that's right. Now, when you call at the $120 level, this is where you get Clifton Webb.
Then you get the Stars and Stripes Forever, Don. That's correct.
Right. And when you call at the, we're over here. When you call at the $180 level, you get all of these, either the tape or the cassette and the video. Don't forget, when you call, the volunteers will have all this information.
We'd like to tell you now to call these numbers. That's 263-4040 or 1-800-236-3636. And we'd like to thank Marjorie for calling from Madison, Wisconsin. Thanks, Marjorie, for your pledge.
If you prefer to write, send your check to Wisconsin Public Television, P.O. Box 5036, Madison, Wisconsin, 53705.
As I continued my research, I became acquainted with several of the Sousa men, and they would tell their old compatriots, here's this young fellow who's doing a book on the governor, and let's cooperate. And the name just came out of nowhere. You must visit so-and-so.
I was just 23 years old, and to me it was a wonderful thing happening to me. We started to play, and I thought, oh, this is wonderful. And that's how I felt all the way through until we got to the Stars and Stripes. They started to play Stars and Stripes, and it was so wonderful, I couldn't play. I started to forget what I was doing. I just couldn't play. I was so involved in the situation. There was Mr. Sousa conducting, and I'm playing in the band. It was wonderful.
densely populated states, we would play a matinee performance in one town and a night performance in another. And wherever there wasn't any regular trains to hook our cars on, why, they had special trains for us, special trains. I look upon him as a great man, a man who could attract people, and a lot of people came to see him as much as they did to hear his band, because he was an immaculate figure. He was a picture when he walked out on the stage. And there was no other attraction like that traveling in those days. His name had a touch of magic, and it still has.
He was the Beatles. He was. You could not compare Sousa with any one person today because, well, you didn't have the media, and you did it in an entirely different way. But Sousa did it as no one had done it before, and really as no one will ever do it since, because the technology has changed. Sousa finally did it by the railroad. This local success is great. Appearing here and there is great. But this was new. Getting on the train, finding every town that could support a concert, back and across the United States. That was a new idea. And that was the only way you could really become a media star. You didn't have television, you didn't have any way of transmitting, but you got on the train and you went everywhere.
Oh, did we move? I want to tell you, I used to carry in my cab my itinerary. We got a new itinerary for a week, telling you what time we arrived in the town, where the concert was, what time the matinee began. But I'd meet people on the tour, and they'd say, "Where did you play yesterday?" And I know I'd have to think about it. We traveled so fast, I'd have to consult the itinerary. I forgot where I was yesterday. Now, that's how fast we went.
As a young director of the Marine Band, he saw the other guys making it. And he knew that if he could get free of this commitment to the President of the United States, he could have a very successful career. That's when he signed up with David Blakely, who was the manager of Patrick Gilmore. And this was a very shrewd move on Sousa's part. Of course, things fell into place beautifully for Sousa. First of all, the first year he went out with his own band, Patrick Gilmore died. Very convenient. It left the field wide open.
Sousa hired the best musicians Blakely's money could buy and rehearsed them without mercy, usually in 3 languages, German, Italian, and English, with some of his father's Spanish for emphasis. They played Sousa's difficult arrangements of Wagner, Rossini, and Grieg. Sousa's marches were offered to the audience like candy as a reward for applauding the serious numbers. Sousa earned 4 times his Marine salary, plus 20% of the profits. Blakely found Sousa a new publisher for his marches on much better terms. And even though Blakely took 50% of the march royalties, Sousa now earned as much as $40,000 a year from just one march. At the Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893, Sousa played popular tunes along with the classics. But he found that medleys of old-time hymns were what won the hearts of the millions of Midwesterners who ventured from their small towns to the big fair.
The Columbian Exhibition turned out to be his real launching pad. That's where he got his first sustained national attention as an independent bandmaster. The fair would have, on certain days, 200,000 or 300,000 people in the grounds. The largest day in Chicago, they had something like 700,000. I think you could imagine that this wonderful visual scene was complemented by the kinds of music that the Sousa band played, which included hymns. And there was collective choral singing. The crowds would join in. The fact that people actually sang these hymns added to the intensity of the moment. And the fair was frequently described in a vocabulary that can only be called religious.
even in my hometown, there were some old ladies that remembered when he came and talked about it. And he had a valet, always on tour. It was usually the man who held up the encore cards when they were playing, but he was also specifically Sousa's valet to get him ready for concerts, to make sure he looked just right. And he took half hour, 45 minutes, an hour sometimes to prepare, to make sure that he looked terrific. I mean, he had his uniforms were all specially made. There were no pockets because he had a bit of a pot belly, so no pockets so that they would bulge, and valet would make sure his shoes were shined and his pants were pressed. He took a huge cabinet of fresh uniforms, and those were always kept, really clean. And the band, which I think is an interesting point about the band, is nowadays you go into a concert and the orchestra players sort of mingle on, and you have this sort of annoying, click, 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 and boom, 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 and all these noises, they're sort of superfluous to what's going to happen. With Sousa's band, there was, you got to the hall early, and you got your instrument out early, and you warmed up early, but once those doors were open and the crowd started coming in, there was no more playing, and no one went out on the stage. The stage was filled with chairs and with the stands, but the old gas lanterns are burning in the hall, and the people are coming in, but no music, not a sound. And 5 minutes before or so, Mr. Russell, the librarian, would say, "All on," and the musicians would come in single file from both sides. The winds on the, as you're looking at it, from the left and the brass from the right, filed in. Their beautiful black Sousa band uniforms. Their shoes are shined, their pants are pressed. They sit down and they look at the music, because lots of times they were going to play something they'd never played before that night. I mean, the program could change at any time. They'd just peek through and see, look and point, and the old guys would say, "Watch out there, he's going to take it in 3/4." But no music. Sousa would be waiting in the wings, and the minute the clock, hit the time, you'd hear the gas lamps, the hall would come down, and the gas lamps on the stage would light up. And Sousa would come out, and he walked very fast because his legs were short. So he'd come out almost striding to come out. He'd take one bow, turn to the band, and wham!
A real 8. Don't play with that way. Play with what you see, not with what you hear. Because then it comes in, you hear that. Let's be very precise. Right here, letter E. Everything okay? Everything okay? There's a difference of opinion there in pitch. I heard the Sousa band when I was about, I imagine, 8, 9, 10, or 11, someplace. I can remember where I sat in the Bardavon Theater in Poughkeepsie, New York. I can't remember one thing about what I heard. I know that my father got me out of school because he and my mother went to the evening concert, and I can't remember. I can remember that I was there, and I wish I could remember more. It provokes me. I'd like to be able to say, "Oh, yes, I said he was this, he was that." I can't remember a thing. My father wrote the Sousa band and tried to get me with the Sousa band. He got a letter from Harry Askins. He says, "Mr. Sousa does not use children in his band." I give my father A for effort.
sir.
I think for many people, Sousa bridged a number of worlds. They could go to a Sousa concert, feel they were participating in something that was important and serious, yet also enjoyable. Sousa said it's okay to enjoy popular music. You don't have to feel ashamed of it. When he began his career, there were very few symphony orchestras in America. And I think there were probably many Americans who heard their first Beethoven or Wagner or Verdi at a band concert. The music was geared right to the center. It was not beyond the audience. There were some who felt, in fact, that it was pitched a little too low. There were Sousa critics who thought he played too much popular, show, vulgar music. But Sousa, I think, knew what his audience was there for. They were there for pleasure.
Then we have applause, applause. Get it ready, get it ready. Get it ready. Applause, 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 so forth, so forth, so forth. Hey, a lot of applause, a lot of applause, a lot of applause. Okay, I'll ask you to stand up. You're going to receive the applause. Take the bow, so forth, so forth, so forth. All right, now here we are. That's the way it's going to happen, so plan on that. We're going to play this number just as soon as I get you seated. Pa-ta-ta-tum.
Sousa would turn and bow, and he'd turn to the first clarinetist and he'd say, El Cap. And the clarinets would say El Cap to the saxophones, and the saxophones would say El Cap to the tuba players, and the tuba players would say El Cap to the trombone players, and the trombone players El Cap to the cornet players. Well, by this time, Sousa's already 3 bars into the introduction of it. There was no time to hunt music. They had to memorize these things. It's great. In the first cornet book of the Encore books is just the introductions to about 10 of the favorite Sousa marches that they just keep right there. So while Herbert Clark is playing, yep, up, Frank Simon's running like hell trying to find the parts.
Bass drum, in looking at the music as it was written in Mr. Sousa's day, the stem down indicated bass drum being played with cymbals as one instrument. In other words, the player would hold the cymbal in the left hand and hit it on one that's fastened to the top of the drum. He'd hit the other one like this.
No one who has watched and heard Helmicke with my band will differ with me when I declare that my bass drummer has the spirit and soul of a great artist.
Bass drummer Gus Helmicke gave the band its heartbeat. He was Sousa's most valued and highest paid musician, a virtuoso who could play melodies on his drum.
In marches and things, he was able to do little things and put a little accents in where the boss would do something like that and Gus would give him a little accent. Sousa probably felt that it would sound good in there. And he could do it, but I don't think anyone else could do it. We had other bass drummers that would come in after Gus left, or when he was off. They did a good job, but there was no rapport there like between Sousa and Gus.
Sousa wrote El Capitan as a song to be sung in the third act of one of his most popular operas. As he did with many of his opera tunes, he arranged it into a march. It became the big hit of 1896. When Admiral Dewey sailed into Manila Bay during the Spanish-American War, the band on deck was playing El Capitan.
When If You Knew Sousa returns, we'll meet the music man from Iowa who got his start in Sousa's band. But now, take this opportunity to pick up your phone and call this station with your pledge of support to keep programs like The American Experience alive and thriving.
Bing, wasn't that drum something? Just like we do that, we'd like you to pick up the drum also. We'd like to have you play some beautiful music for us, and please, would you please pick up that phone? Sousa in demand. We'll be back in a few minutes, but during this time, we need to have you call this number. Several, as a matter of fact, 263-4040 or 1-800-236-3636. Call this number so we can keep this type of programming for you, our public. Show support for quality TV. Show support for programs such as we have with Sousa at the present time. And to do that, we need to have you pick up that phone. Shopping's been busy, but at the same time, put that energy level just as we have the bass drummer, as you watch in Sousa, pick up the phone and call. Here, Dave.
And thanks, Greg. And if you do call in, we have some special spicy incentives here to invite you to become a member of Wisconsin Public Television. If you become a member, say at the $70 level, we have for you your choice of a compact disc or a cassette of the Allentown Band and our band Heritage. This has a number of wonderful big band, or pardon me, what am I trying to say here? Brass band. Thank you, Don. Pieces on it, and it can be yours at the $70 level, your choice of the CD or the cassette. At the $120 level, Stars and Stripes Forever, the Clifton Webb film, and he portrays Sousa. That's available at the $120 level. At $180, your choice of the video and the cassette or the CD. So this is just a way to add extra enjoyment to your experience here watching the program now about Sousa. And to be able to listen to the types of music that was played by the gentleman and the band would be a wonderful way to add enjoyment. But the important thing right now, we have not active phones. We don't have very much music at all going on here. We'd like to have the ringing of bells, in other words. So that requires you to pick up the phone and give us a call using those numbers at the bottom of your screen. Now we go to Don.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. I'm Don Sanford. I'm the production manager here at Wisconsin Public TV. And Admiral Dewey and On the Deck and El Capitan and Marina in Manila Bay, what a way to make an entrance. And let me tell you how you can make an entrance into our great family of members here at Wisconsin Public Television. Just roll right in here, just like Admiral Dewey, and become a member at the $360 level, or the $180, or the $120, the $70, or the $35 level. Crash right in here, make a call, and become a supporter of Wisconsin Public Television. At each of these levels, you'll get a great benefit of, well, first off, you get the programs. You get an Airwaves magazine. If you call and put your membership on a Visa or MasterCard, you'll get the 1993 Farmer's Almanac and the Home and Hearth Companion as a thank you gift. There are preems at some of the higher levels. You can put your membership on Visa or MasterCard. Whatever you do, it's important. It doesn't matter what level you call us at, fit the one that fits your budget the best. But call us right now, make a pledge of support. Be like Sousa, do something big, something flashy, make a pledge of support and call us right now. Greg.
Thank you very much, Don. As the drummer is the heartbeat of the band, we'd like you to be Wisconsin Public Television's drummer. And when you become a drummer, you become a member. Please become a member of Wisconsin Public Television, and remember that it's Wisconsin Public Television that connects Wisconsin. We make the programs Weekend, American Journey, Wisconsin Gardener. There's a variety of programs that are offered there. And we asked you to become a member, and the way to become a member is to pick up that telephone and dial 263-4040, 1-800-236-3636, and that will help you to become a member. We need you to pick up the phone now. Don't run for a sandwich. Don't go out and wrap a present, but grab the phone and call Wisconsin Public Television. It's very imperative, and now we're going to go to Dave.
And thank you, Greg. During the program, this last segment, they were talking about how Sousa successfully bridged the gap between popular and classical music. And in a very real sense, Wisconsin Public Television does the same thing with our music programming. Everything from Peter, Paul, and Mary and Harry Chapin, all the way to Pavarotti. It's all there, in a full range in between as well. It's entertainment, just one of the many facets of Wisconsin Public Television. Of course, we have very educational programs and very informative programs, news programs, a good variety. And if you find that you count on Wisconsin Public Television for your information and your entertainment, now is a good time to tell us that, to vote for programs like Sousa that you're enjoying this afternoon. To do so, pick up your phone, as Greg mentioned, and dial those numbers on the bottom of your screen. 263-4040, that's in the Madison area, or 1-800-236-3636. Talk to one of the volunteers about these wonderful premiums that we have, the video available at the $120 level, or the cassette, your choice of the cassette or the CD at the $70 level, or at the $180 level, the video and your choice of the cassette or the CD. Now we go back to Don.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. Hey, here is today's pledge fun fact. Did you know that an $80 membership in Wisconsin Public Television works out to about the same cost as two people going to a matinee once a month? $80 membership, what you pay every month, would be about the same as two people going to a movie, a matinee at the movies, once a month. Now, we're not trying to discourage you from going to the movies, but we are trying to just point out how inexpensive, how economical membership in Wisconsin Public Television is. $80 may seem like a lot, but when you take it, that's over the course of a year. When you look at it that way, it really isn't all that much money. You're spending it anyway, spend it with us. Our costs are increasing. Programs that we buy, we do not get these for free, and we are spending good money to bring you programs that you want to see that we think you'll enjoy. James Steinbeck, our program director, needs to have a big checkbook because we're talking serious money. We're talking American Playhouse around $85,000. Great performances around $71,000. Quality programming does not come cheap. Call us right now, make a pledge of support, help us bring the programming to you, the kind of quality programming that we know you want to see and that you're seeing right now, right here on Wisconsin Public Television. Call us right now, become one of our contributors. Greg?
Thank you very much, Don. One of the things, as Don mentioned, with the cost of programming, it is very expensive, and so we do ask you to become a member of Wisconsin Public Television. One of the ways they can really help is through your employers. In Madison and statewide, a number of the employers will double the impact of your pledge by matching the funds that are used during these pledge drives. So let your employer help you double your package. Your company will help match the funds that you're going to pledge. Check with your Human Resources Department and find out if your company, in fact, does do this. Maybe you can be the one that would start them to help making a match and therefore would help Wisconsin Public Television. Remember, you're a team. It's Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin, your employer, and you. You are the most important person in the entire circle. So we ask you to pick up the phone and dial 263-4040, and now here's Dave.
Thanks again, Greg. And, December is a magic month. We call this December magic, but December has always been a magic month with the holidays coming on. Why not consider using Wisconsin Public Television memberships as a gift idea? I'm sure that you can think of many family members or friends that would benefit from a membership of Wisconsin Public Television. In a way, you're supporting Wisconsin Public Television yourself and impressing upon your friends and family members how important you believe this service is. Might be a good idea, a gift membership. Consider that. Share the wealth of Wisconsin Public Television. It really is a gift that keeps on giving all year round. Quality programs come your way week in, week out, all year round. We have a number of ways that you can become a member, of course. We have the levels that we suggest, or you can pick a level in between. And we have incentives like our thank you gifts as well. You can talk to someone on the phone when you call in. But the important thing is to call in right now. Use those numbers on the bottom of your screen. Every membership at the $35 level and up receives Airwaves, a monthly guide to Wisconsin Public Television to help increase the quality of your family viewing. And if you use your credit card, these two special incentives come your way from the Farmer's Almanac. Also, your phone representative can talk to you about that as well. But now we're going back to Don.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. When you do call, don't forget we have great premiums to offer for you, wonderful programs, Airways Magazine, Farmer's Almanac, all kinds of terrific things just for you when you call and make a pledge of support. Let me take a minute before we go to thank you, because I may not be here again for a little while. Thank Will and Tom, our engineers today, and production crew today, Lynn and Francine and Dave, Troy, another Will, and I think I've got everybody here. and Lynn in the control room, and Liz also in the control room directing this thing. Let me thank them all for helping bring our program to you today. It's a big team we have working here, bringing the television productions you see on Wisconsin Public Television to you. And you can become part of that team when you call and you make a pledge of support. Call us right now. Think about the level you'd like to pledge at. One of our volunteers will be happy to take your pledge and talk to you about the level that seems best for your budget. What's important right now is for you to call. Thanks very much for your pledge.
If you prefer to write, send your check to Wisconsin Public Television, P.O. Box 5036, Madison, Wisconsin 53705. Local presentation of the American Experience is made possible by a grant from Lignotech USA, a Wisconsin-based manufacturer of wood-based chemicals for agricultural, industrial, and specialty applications, and the Bemis Companies of Wisconsin, manufacturers of flexible packaging and packaging machinery at these Wisconsin-based companies, Kerwood, Hasten, and Millprint.
I was just a kid, about 12, not quite 12. Sousa Band was playing at the State Fair in Springfield, and my dad took me. My dad was a lover of band music, and that one concert literally changed my whole life. I really couldn't sleep. I heard that beautiful band, and I made my dad take me again. Was it really that good? And I'm not dreaming. It's the greatest sound I ever heard in any band. Any band. It wasn't just the men in the band either. It was Mr. Sousa. I remember in Joliet, this would be about 1922, Sousa Band came to Joliet and played a concert. They got off the train at 7:15 in the morning. Now, normally, there'd been some other ensemble. There wouldn't be anybody down there. We're 5,000 people at the station. The streets on Joliet Street were 3 blocks lined up. And what do you think happened? The Sousa Band, they didn't play. They paraded down the street for 2 or 3 blocks, not a long one, to the hotel, really. And they came down the street, and Sousa was in a big white Cadillac sitting up in the back, you know. And, of course, the radio men were all, Sousa. And people, he hasn't made a downbeat yet. I mean, they hadn't heard the concert. Don't think of putt-putt. I'm a violinist. I would use my entire bow. Ram, bam, beep, bum. Not putt-putt. Here we go. Bum, make those tones ring. It's a full chord, isn't it? Make that chord ring out. Here we go. Crescendo. More. He was a very difficult man, and particularly with solos. Well, Mr. Pryor told me this. Arthur Pryor in my own home told me this. that he was to play a solo in Cork, Ireland. And he came out on the stage, and his shoelace was not tied. And Sousa came down and saw this. And Sousa said, follow me. He left the stage. And when they got in the wings, he said to Pryor, tie your shoelace. You're a soloist with the Sousa band. More! You need, hold it! Now, push! Now kick it! Kick it again! Some people think I'm tough. Well, I'm demanding, yes. But if tough means you want it right, then I'm tough. I'm uncompromising. I'm totally dedicated to perfection. And when it's just about right, I'm unhappy. To me, that's like a pilot that misses the runway by 8 feet. I mean, you're dead. He's almost right. That's right. Now the flutes. Thank you. Flutes. Allegro. The droning open fifth. G and the D on the trumpet. Good. He didn't play claptrap. Take a look. There isn't a piece of junk in the whole program. I'm over here. I'm over here. What are you looking over there? No, you have to look over here. You still aren't over here. I'm over here. That's it. He was smart enough to know that the audience that attends the Sousa Band concerts is not the same audience that goes to the Metropolitan. He knew that. He played to the common man. And he, by doing that, didn't only attract the common man, he attracted the sophisticate because it was quality. And even the most sophisticated critic could go and say, this is music. He has it all. You're talking about, there's mind music. I'm talking about Bach, so on. Mind music. There's heart music. There's foot music. And you, when you build a program, you reach all those sources.
You paid your 75 cents to get your regular ticket in the hall, and you get your program. There's one here. And for an extra 10 cents, you could get the nice Sousa Band, official Sousa Band souvenir program. Sousa would commission Paul Starr to do a cover on it. Here's your official Sousa picture, suitable for framing. All this was good. And here's a picture of Sousa on his horse. Sousa as sportsman. It's good stuff. I mean, in my stay in Iowa, people eat that up. Guy rides a horse, shoots a gun. boxers, and his friends were trap shooters. Friends were horsemen.
He was one of the finest trap shooters in the United States, and he was a fellow that could knock out 100 birds without missing one. He loved a horse, a rod, and a gun, and he was a real he-man.
He was very much aware of the need to overcome this prejudice of American males, I think, in particular. The fear that they would be branded as effeminate or sissies if they went in for concert music. The Sousa concert gave you the best of both possible worlds. It gave you the macho image and it gave you the music at the same time. There's a publicity shot taken of him in younger years with boxing gloves. He wanted people to know that he was underneath all of that, there's still a man.
On the 22nd of February, 1879, I was introduced to the loveliest girl I had ever seen, Jenny Bellis of Philadelphia. She had a cloud of chestnut hair and a perfect complexion. She was wearing a little gray bonnet and was charmingly dressed. I liked everything about her. Her manner, her speech, her voice. We married before her 17th birthday rolled around. Mrs. Sousa realized that my life work was to be music, that music was an exacting mistress, and that domestic affairs would have to be subordinated to the musical demands of the moment. She was therefore careful never to interrupt my train of thought or disturb me in my work. She always had the kindliest words for my achievements because of her incurable belief that I can do it better than anybody else.
The Sousas had 3 children. John Philip Jr., born in 1881, went on to play baseball for Princeton. His father brought him in as a ringer for the Sousa baseball team. It's no surprise that Sousa himself was the pitcher. Press releases assure us he was outstanding. There were 2 daughters, Jane Priscilla and Helen. In 1966, Helen was interviewed for a radio program.
If Father wanted something done, he'd take a whack at it himself, and he was not what the Spanish call muy hábil, handy. And so there was always a constant feud about Mother's manicure scissors, which she selected with the greatest care, and then Father would use them to get a cork out of a bottle. There was a small library off the living room down the Sands Point house, and Father would go in there and sit down and score something, and there could be 20 or 25 people in the living room talking at the top of their lungs. Didn't bother him in the least, had terrific concentration. But if they started to sing anything or play anything, you'd hear them say, hey, 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 hey. And that had to stop.
There was a story that one of the soprano soloists talked about riding on the train one night. They were going through the western part of the country, and it's real cold outside, and the moon's kind of showing. The train's just chugging along. She was sitting in the car with Sousa in the they called it the Royal Suite, where Sousa and the soloist could sit and relax. And he kept them away from the bands. He didn't want them to even talk to them. And she said he was just sitting there smoking his cigar, and she was sort of watching him and reading at the same time. And he pulled out his little manuscript book and just started sketching and took his cigar out and put it in the ashtray and doing all this. And she started watching him really intensely and going along, sketching out this march that turned out to be the Invincible Eagle. She sat there and watched Sousa compose the Invincible Eagle. And she said it was almost like when he was done with this sketch that he put his violin back in his case and folded it up put his little book back in his pocket, stuck his cigar back into his mouth, and looked out the window. He says, "My goodness, ma'am, it's a really dark night out tonight." That's all he said. Well, he was a complete introvert, and he spoke very quietly, and he had a curious little Baltimore accent. You know, it was a kind of I remember he said "yo." It was a curious way they say their R's in Baltimore. I can't imitate it, but he was a good, in-demand luncheon speaker and so on, and he told dry little stories.
In 1921, a nervous boy from Mason City, Iowa, joined the Sousa band and was quickly acclaimed as a flute virtuoso. He later went on to the New York Philharmonic and then a career as a composer and radio comedian. But his heart remained at home with the small-town band. In 1954, he wrote The Music Man. His name, Meredith Wilson.
We used to visit on the train, you know, we had a little 3-car train, and you know, always you left at 6 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes you play a matinee in Butte and a night in Cheyenne, and you made big jumps. But he would visit, you know, on the train one day. He said, you know, he said, you must never be falsely modest. He said, I note that you're studying score. You want to be a conductor someday? I said, I hope so. Composer, possibly composer. He said, fine. He said, if you achieve this, he said, never be falsely modest, because he said, get you no place. He says, for example, I write the most popular marches in the world today. And I said, oh, of course, Mr. Sousa. He said, why are they the most popular? I said, well, because they're the best. He said, well, they are, but that's not a good answer. He said, they're the best because I write for the military band, like Beethoven wrote for the symphony orchestra. I conceive it for the instruments and the sections in the band as soon as Beethoven conceived it for the... He said, you know how Semper Fidelis goes? I said, well, certainly. It goes, he says, I'll show you how it goes. He says, I'm talking about the trumpet solo. Pa-pee, ba-ba-bum, ba-ba, ba-ba, ba-ba-bum, ba-bum. And he says, what happens then? I said, well, then comes the drums. They've got the big drums. He says, I'll show you. What happens then? I said, well, then comes the bass, the basses, and it goes like, he says, I'll show you how they go. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 he says, now what happens? You ought to know. If you don't know, you're fired. I said, I do know. It's the woodwinds, and it goes like in the piccolos and the flutes, and it goes like this. He says, I'll show you how it goes. He says, then comes the counter melody with the dominant strain with the trombones all down on the front. He says, if you don't stand up and march, then you never will.
I keep reminding people that Sousa's teacher was a student of Brahms, that he had an enormous training in European music, even though he never left Washington. He was an arranger for Offenbach when he was in his 20s, when Offenbach came to the United States, but he was the successful arranger of Gilbert and Sullivan's operettas in the United States, and Sullivan remarked at what a great orchestrator he was, again, when he was in his 20s. He traveled Europe widely. He had perfect pitch. He remembered performances of all the great masters that he heard live himself in Europe and brought those ideas back to the United States. This is a musician of extraordinary sophistication.
Sousa was inducted into the Shriners in the Alma Temple in Washington and wrote this march for them in the 1920s and performed it with a band of 6,200 Shriners along with the Sousa Band.
A march must be as free from padding as a marble statue. Every line must be carved with unerring skill. There's no form of musical composition where the harmonic structure must be more clean-cut.
Incredible. You do something to this in ink and never have to make a change.
No correction. Here he pencils in just a little bit of what he's going to do for counter melody.
It is a measure of inspiration. Anybody can write music of a sort, but touching the public heart is quite another thing. My religion lies in my composition.
Almost every Sousa march has one of these breakup strains, and they're lots of fun. In this case, I think Sousa possibly was thinking about the premiere in Griffith Stadium where there would be all these Shriner bands to play along, because he writes a gigantic trumpet fanfare.
It is not a nonchalant morning's work. I often dig for my themes. I practice a sort of self-hypnotism by penetrating the inner chambers of my brain and receiving the themes. Sincere composers believe in God.
The final act of If You Knew Sousa will be coming up on the American Experience in just a few minutes. But before you hear Sousa's famous Stars and Stripes, why not give this station's volunteers a call with a pledge of support so its quality programming can last forever, just like the music of John Philip Sousa.
Yes, indeed. Why not give our wonderful volunteers a call right now and become a member of Wisconsin Public Television? Isn't it a fascinating glimpse, kind of an insider's look at the Allentown Band rehearsing and getting ready to perform coming up in just a few short minutes after we take this brief intermission? We'll hear the Allentown Band perform a march that was based on a George Gershwin production, Swanee. So that's coming up. But right now, as I mentioned, we're just taking a brief intermission to invite you to lend your support to Wisconsin Public Television. We're all about teamwork. We're all about membership. We're all about people getting together. Our single largest source of funding is from people just like you. And this, during these pledge drives, is the best way that we can reach you and invite you to become a member. So please respond and do yourself a favor by supporting quality public television. Now Greg has something for us.
Thank you very much, Dave. Yes, I do. Membership is the key, and there are various levels of membership. As we look on this here board, there's the $35, there's the $70 level, which is in quarterly installments is $17.50. There's a $120 level at $30 quarterly installments, the $180 level at $45, and the $360 at $90. You can also use your Visa or MasterCard. And if you use Visa or MasterCard, that makes it an instant member. And we have an extra incentive for you that are using your Visas and MasterCard. And they are right here. They're the Old Farmer's Almanac of 1993. And we also have got Health and Home Companion for 1993. These are just a neat way of allowing you to get an extra incentive by using your Visa and MasterCard. We need your membership. When we say we need it because that helps everyone in the state of Wisconsin benefit from good quality educational television. So take advantage of calling 263-4040, 1-800-236-3636, and now here's Don with some premium information.
Well, thank you very much, Greg. You know, when you do call and make a pledge of support, we have a number of premiums, thank you gifts, premiums, incentives, whatever you want to call it, when you do call and make that pledge of support. Listen, we have two very, very fine recordings here. When you call and pledge at the $70 level, we offer to you the Allentown Band recordings. There's a lot of great Sousa and other marches on here, either on a CD or on a cassette. That's yours, either one at the $70 level. When you call and pledge at the $120 level, you get a copy, your very own copy of Stars and Stripes Forever, the one and only John Philip Sousa movie starring Clifton Webb. And it says in the back here, Clifton Webb hits a high note as the king of marches, John Philip Sousa. How true it is. And if you call at the $180 level, we'll send you either the CD and the tape, or the tape and the videotape. And plus, everyone who calls and makes a pledge at any level gets Good Old Airwaves magazine, the only complete program guide to Wisconsin Public Television. Plus, we also have great incentive gifts if you call and put your pledge on Visa or MasterCard. Go to your phone right now, march right on over there, and make a pledge of support to Wisconsin Public Television. Greg?
Thank you very much, Don. And remember, in programming, the programs are as diverse as the state of Wisconsin is. As varied as the roads and hills that we have in the state of Wisconsin. Dinosaurs, Pavarotti, McNeil Laird News Hour. We also have got Sesame Street. Sesame Street was the only children's program that received an Emmy this last year. This is an American experience through music. There's science, there's nature, elections, public affairs, and anything that takes place in the state of Wisconsin you will find on Wisconsin Public Television. Take advantage of the opportunity. You heard the phone ring. We need more phones ringing. We need to have more members calling. So let's make these phones hot and let the people really work out on these telephones today. And as a member, become a member, and call 263-4040, 1-800-236-3636. Become a member of Wisconsin Public Television. And now, Dave.
Thanks, Greg. You know, the program that we're watching this afternoon really does a good job of exemplifying the enduring nature of Sousa music. As a matter of fact, as the program makes the point, there are many grandparents now that are bringing their grandchildren to band concerts and marching band concerts where Sousa music is played. So the music lives on and on, a very enduring source of fine music. And Wisconsin Public Television endures as well. We've been here for generations, and we will continue to be here through your support. It's an important thing to be a member of Wisconsin Public Television because, as I mentioned before, our largest source of funding does come from individuals just like you. So right now we invite you to become a part of all this. Become a part of December Magic by calling us. One of our fine phone volunteers here will be happy to talk to you about becoming a member of Wisconsin Public Television. 263-4040 in the Madison area or anywhere in the viewing area, 1-800-236-3636. Don?
Thank you very much, Dave. You know, if you were in a band, a performer in a band or an orchestra, or a choral group like I was once, it's no fun to do a show unless you have support, unless you have someone in the audience cheering and applauding when you do something really nice. That's a great feedback. That's great support. And we're the same way here at Wisconsin Public Television. We need your support, and we appreciate it. When the phone rings and someone calls and says, hey, I just watched this program, or I'm a regular viewer of Wisconsin Public Television, I want to like to make a pledge of support. That's applause to us. That's great news. It makes us feel real good. And Wisconsin Public Television needs and wants and appreciates your support. Join our team, become a member of the great family of viewers all across the state, from Shawano to Sheboygan. Viewers all across the state are becoming members of Wisconsin Public Television. Do your part. Join as a member right now. Guarantee that we'll have high-quality programming on Wisconsin Public Television for a long time to come. High-quality programming for viewers all over.
Even today, you can still get an
idea of what the American continent was like when man first came here. There's just about every sort of natural environment you can think of. In Canada alone, there are forests and grasslands, mountains and lakes, and sandy beaches. The weather can be very wet or very dry. It can be blisteringly hot or icy cold. Some areas are teeming with wildlife. Other areas are almost completely deserted. But none of these different climates and environments stop at the U.S. border. The Arctic region that stretches across the top of Canada overlaps into Alaska. The huge expanse of subarctic tundra, which covers much of the rest of the country, also spills over into Alaska. The eastern woodlands and Great Lakes region are shared by both Canada and the United States. The Great Plains include both the Canadian and the American prairies. The damp coastal regions of British Columbia also stretch down as far as California. The high plateau region of BC includes parts of the northwestern United States. In fact, all of the Americas are split up into a patchwork of strikingly different geographical regions, which bear almost no relation at all to the present-day political divisions of the continent. The Indians of what is now southeastern Canada and the northeastern United States were the woodland people. Those who lived in what are now the Canadian and American prairies were the people of the plains. The Indians who lived on the shores of the Pacific, from British Columbia to northern California, were the peoples of the Northwest Coast. All of North and South America was divided in this way into a mosaic of different geographical regions. Since the native peoples were the first human beings on this continent, there was no man here before them to claim possession of the land, so they were free to roam wherever they wished. The only thing stopping them going from one region to another was the ability to survive in each new environment. That was the only passport they needed.
Modern Canada was founded by two nations, France and England, as reflected in our two official languages, reflétés par nos deux langues officielles. But for thousands of years before the French and the English came on the scene, Canada was divided among the different native peoples who inhabited the various geographical regions, the First Nations of Canada. So far, we've only talked about the Indians, but there's another First Nation we haven't looked at yet, the Eskimos, or Inuit. Let's see how they fit into the picture and where they come from.
Like the traditions of the Indians, Eskimo traditions also maintain that they have always been here. But scientists believe they too originally came from Asia, across the same Bering Strait that brought the Indians here. When the first peoples arrived in the Americas from Asia about 25,000 years ago, the Ice Age had turned the Bering Strait into a land bridge, joining the two continents together.
But by about 10,000 years ago, the Ice Age was coming to an end, and the process which had formed the land bridge reversed itself. The glaciers melted, and the water ran back into the ocean, flooding the Bering Strait, and cutting off North America from Asia. From now on, any Asian hunters who wanted to come here would either have to do it by boat or wait until the Bering Strait froze over in the winter so that they could walk across the ice. It is possible that other waves of Asians did just that, eventually moving into various regions of North America. But for a long period, there was one region which remained empty, the Arctic itself. This was, in fact, the last major region of unoccupied land on Earth. Not surprisingly, since this is such a harsh and forbidding environment. It wasn't until about 2000 BC that for some unknown reason, another group of Asian hunters decided to brave the elements and to settle in the Arctic. We can get some idea of what they were like from these present-day Netsilik Eskimos. Although the first wave of hunters who moved into the Arctic were not the direct ancestors of the modern Eskimos. In fact, to distinguish between them, the original occupants of the Arctic are known as Old Eskimos or Paleo-Eskimos. The Paleo-Eskimos came from the same sort of Asiatic stock as the Indians. The main thing that set them apart from the Indians was the fact that they arrived in the Americas much later and confined themselves to the Arctic. Between roughly 2000 and 1000 BC, the Paleo-Eskimos spread all across the Arctic from Siberia to Alaska to Labrador and then on to Greenland, an enormous territory, nearly 8,000 kilometers wide. They remained the sole inhabitants of this huge region until about 900 AD, when they were replaced by yet another wave of Asiatic hunters, which spread across the Arctic from Alaska to Greenland. These are known as the Thule people. It is from the Thule that the present-day Canadian Eskimos are descended. The word Eskimo itself is an Indian word, which means foreigner. But Canadian Eskimos never use this term. They always refer to themselves as the Inuit, which means the people.
Thanks to modern science, we can now live almost completely independently of the elements. In the coldest Canadian winter, I can surround myself with tropical plants if I wish. Or, on the hottest summer's day, I can go ice skating. We're no longer at the mercy of our environment. But for most of the history of this country, the particular climate and terrain of the various regions where people lived affected almost everything they did. This is especially true of life here in pre-European times, when the native peoples lived very close to nature indeed. How did they live, in fact, during all those thousands of years before the Europeans started to settle here?
To find out what sort of life the native peoples led in pre-European times, we must start with what they were doing when they first arrived in the Americas. They were big game hunters. Their chief sources of food were the mammoths, mastodons, and giant bison, which they had followed here from Asia across the Bering Strait land bridge, and which had grown to such an enormous size as a response to the frigid conditions of the Ice Age. But just as the Indians began to spread out across the Americas about 10,000 years ago, the Ice Age was coming to an end. And as the climate warmed up and the landscape changed accordingly, it became more and more difficult for the mammoths and other very large animals to survive. At the same time, the Indians were becoming more and more efficient at hunting their prey. The result of all this was that within about 1,000 years of the first settling of the Americas, many of the large Ice Age animals had become extinct. So now the Indians had to devise other ways of finding food. They had to adjust their way of life to the particular region they inhabited. In the forests of what is now eastern Canada and the States, they hunted a variety of game. They learned to make the utmost of whatever animal they came across. They wasted nothing. Its meat was their food. Its skin, their clothing and shelter. Its bones became their tools. Its sinews, their threads. They also foraged for many different sorts of wild plants and roots. One of the mainstays of their existence in the woodland region was the birch tree. They used its wood to make snowshoes and toboggans. From birch bark, they fashioned canoes, wigwams, cooking pots. On the northwest coast, salmon provided the bulk of the Indians' diet. They also put the giant cedars of this region to numerous uses: totem poles, houses, canoes. In the Arctic, for much of the year, survival of the Inuit depended almost exclusively on the seal. They ate its meat, used seal oil as fuel, made their clothes out of sealskin. They even learned to use the Arctic snow itself as the building material of their houses or igloos. On the prairies, the Indians stalked the buffalo, the last echo of their original big game hunting tradition. In some cases, as here in southern Alberta, at a place which is still known as head-smashed-in buffalo jump, they kept up the Ice Age practice of stampeding large numbers of animals over cliffs. The reliance of the Plains Indians on the buffalo was almost total. Buffalo meat made up virtually their entire diet. Their clothes and their teepees were made from buffalo hide.
From being a fairly uniform group of Asian hunters when they first came to the New World, the native peoples gradually developed into a whole range of different cultural groups as they adapted to the different environments on this continent. But in spite of their diversity on a physical level, most of the first inhabitants of Canada and the rest of the Americas had a lot in common on a spiritual level.
To understand the native people's relationship to nature, we have to try to put ourselves in their place. If you live very close to nature for thousands of years, you learn to identify with it to an extraordinary extent. You learn learn to move in the woods as if they were an extension of your own body. You grow very close to the animals that you hunt. You learn how to imitate the sounds they make. You may give yourself an animal name, as these famous Indians did. Sitting Bull, Medicine Crow, Bear Bull, Bear's Belly. You may even get inside the skins of certain animals, either to help you hunt them or for religious purposes. In fact, this identification with animals and plants and every part of the natural world is at the heart of almost all native religions in the Americas. On the surface, these may seem very diverse, but one belief is held almost universally. All living things, plants as well as animals, have souls. Just as biologists now agree that all living things are physically related, so the Indians and the Inuit believed, and continue to believe today, that they are all spiritually related. This means that the idea of give and take is the essence of their lives. This view of the world contrasts sharply with the biblical perception of nature, which was to shape the approach to life of the entire Western world. In this view, nature is seen as a sort of pyramid, with man at the top, dominating everything else. Man was special, because according to the Old Testament, God created man in his own image, and ordered him to subdue the earth, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and the fowl of the air, and every living thing that moveth upon the earth. It would be difficult to imagine a sentiment more alien to the native peoples of this continent, a more complete parting of the ways.
The sign language that many hearing-impaired people use today is based on the same principles as the sign language that was used for thousands of years by the Plains Indians of the Canadian and American prairies. In fact, most of the native peoples on this continent developed some system of visual signs, not only to communicate with the Europeans when they arrived, but also to communicate with each other. The deaf obviously need a sign language. But why should the native peoples have needed to communicate with signs? What sort of languages did they speak anyway? What were the first languages of Canada?
In some ways, the easiest of Canada's first languages to come to grips with is Inuktitut, the language of the Inuit. Because it is the language of all the Eskimo peoples, from Siberia and Alaska in the west, all across the Canadian Arctic, to Greenland in the east. It is also the only native language in the Americas which has close links with some of the languages of Asia. But the picture is a lot more complicated when we come to the Indians. Because there is no such thing as the Indian language. Over the thousands of years that they have been living here, the Indians have developed a tremendous variety of languages which reflect the different cultural regions into which the Americas are divided. Before the coming of the Europeans, the linguistic regions of Canada corresponded fairly closely to the geographical regions. In the Arctic, Inuktitut was the dominant language. The subarctic was split between the Algonquian and the Athabascan languages. These children from the Northwest Territories are having a lesson in one of the Athabascan languages. These Micmac Indians from Nova Scotia are speaking an Algonquian language. Algonquian overlapped into the prairies, where the other main language family was Siouan. In the St. Lawrence River Valley and southern Ontario, the Iroquoian languages were the most widespread. Here is an example of Iroquoian. In the Plateau region, the Kootenai and Salish language families predominated. Salish also overlapped into the northwest coast region, which was the home of 4 other language families: Tlingit, Tsimshian, Haida, and Wakashan. Over the Americas as a whole, there were more than 1,000 different Indian languages in pre-European times, some as unlike one another as English and Chinese. So for the First Nations of this continent to communicate with one another, they needed some sort of international language that they could all understand. Hence, the sign language, which was developed on the Canadian and American prairies, which were a crossroads for many of the different Indian tribes.
Coming up now, answers to the study questions for the First Nations. Scientists speculate that the Native Americans came to the Americas from Asia 25,000 years ago, when the Ice Age froze over the Bering Straits and created a land bridge between the 2 continents. The Native American people believed that all living things, people, plants, and animals, have souls and are spiritually related. Over 1,000 Native American languages existed throughout the Americas in pre-European times. For follow-up reading, members of the American Association of School Librarians and Assignment Discovery suggest America in 1492, edited by Alvin Josephy Jr. For additional reading, consult your library's card catalog and the Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature. Coming up next on Assignment Discovery is The Great Explorers, Columbus. And don't miss the video bulletin board for educators right after Assignment Discovery.
The following program is part of Cable in the Classroom, a service of the cable television industry and your local cable company.
As you view The Great Explorers, Columbus, keep the following study questions and vocabulary words in mind. Stay tuned for the answers and suggested reading following the documentary. How did Columbus and most mariners of his day determine direction? What were 3 objectives of Columbus's second voyage to the New World? Why was La Isabela a poor location to establish a colony? Look for the following words while viewing the documentary: navigator, exploitation, and pinnacle. For a free educator guide to Discovery Network's programming, call 1-800-321-1832 today. Assignment Discovery now presents The Great Explorers, Columbus.
A few hours before sunrise on the 3rd of August, 1492, Christopher Columbus embarked on one of the greatest adventures of all time. Weighing anchor at the small port of Palos, he sailed with his 3 ships, the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Nina, down the River Tinto into the bay. Palos at that time was a thriving center of maritime activity. Its seamen had sailed to distant shores under their own flags, as well as those of neighboring Portugal. Throughout the century, the men of Palos, as well as those from Huelva, Lepe, and other nearby villages, had shipped aboard Portuguese caravels, finding the Azores, the Canary Islands, Madeira, Porto Santo, and venturing farther and farther down the west coast of Africa. Prince Henry the Navigator inspired and directed these voyages. He systematically collected from all sources and ships vital information, including charts and maps, and he established a royal observatory. The Portuguese prince was the godfather of the later voyages, including those of Columbus. Columbus lived for a time in Porto Santo, married to a Portuguese woman of noble birth, Dona Filipa. His son, Diego, was probably born there. He also lived for several years in Lisbon, a bustling city of commerce, buzzing with talk of seaborne adventures and exploration, the search for gold and glory, and for shorter and safer routes to the riches of the Orient than those caravan trails traveled by Marco Polo. Columbus's bold scheme to sail west to find those riches of the East was fortified, if not formulated, during his years in Portugal. But despite his persistent efforts and his unyielding belief in his theories, based on secular as well as biblical sources, he could not find the necessary financial backing. After rejection at court by King John and the death of his wife, he left for Spain in 1485. Arriving first at the port of Palos, he went almost immediately with his son Diego to the Franciscan monastery of La Rábida. There he met the friar Antonio de Marchena, who proved to be of crucial importance to Columbus, introducing him to wealthy patrons and helping to arrange an audience at the court of Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand. It took 6 long and wearisome years for Columbus to win the sovereign's approval, but in 1492 they finally agreed to his exorbitant demands. Formal contracts known as the capitulations were signed in April of that year. They granted Columbus the position of viceroy and governor of all the mainlands and islands he might discover. 10% of all the gold and spices found or traded in those lands tax-free. The title of Admiral of the Ocean Sea and the privilege of passing on the titles and incomes to his heirs and successors. He was also given the use of 2 well-equipped caravels. They were the Nina and the Pinta. He was empowered to charter the 3rd vessel, and as luck would have it, there was a larger ship called a nau, the Santa Maria, in Palos at the time, suitable for this purpose. The most accurate information we have about any of the ships is that of Columbus's favorite, the Nina. In 1979, research scholar Eugene Lyon, director of the Center for Historic Research of the St. Augustine Foundation at Flagler College, found a key reference to the Nina in the Archives of the Indies in Seville. Working through the volumes in the archives, Lyon found the Libro de Armadas, or Book of the Fleets, which contains data on the construction, the size, cargoes, and crews of several Spanish ships traveling to the New World, including the Nina, during the years 1495-1499. According to the Libro, the Nina had 4 masts, was about 67 feet long, and 21 feet wide. A list of provisions boarded for the voyage gives us valuable information about the diet of the crew. Vegetable stews flavored with salt pork, along with sea biscuits, cheese, garlic, raisins, and wine. None of the ships was designed for comfort. Only Columbus and his captains had bunks. The rest of the crew slept wherever they could find space. Cooking was done in a rudimentary firebox on a pile of sand. What we know of Nina's voyage with her sister ships in 1492 comes mainly from an abstract of a copy of Columbus's original ship's journal made by Friar Bartolomé de las Casas around 1530. In the journal, Columbus describes the departure of the fleet. We departed Friday, the 3rd day of August of the year 1492. We went south with a strong sea breeze 60 miles, which is 15 leagues, until sunset. Afterward to the southwest and south by west, which was the route for the Canaries. In the Canary Islands, Columbus topped off his water and other provisions and had the Pinta's rudder repaired. The Latine Regnina was refitted with square sails in order to better drive her before the prevailing winds that blew across those islands. Winds which Columbus believed, incorrectly of course, would take him all the way to Japan, which he estimated to be no more than 2,400 nautical miles west and on the same latitude of 28 degrees north as the Canaries. Like most mariners of the day, Columbus determined direction using a compass and the North Star. If he had had a quadrant or astrolabe on board, it would have been a primitive version, difficult to use on a moving ship. Distances were roughly estimated, and time of day was measured by a half-hourglass turned regularly by a ship's boy. Columbus relied for the most part on a fundamental system of navigation known as dead reckoning. That is, determining a vessel's position at sea based on the run since her last known position and taking into account the factors of distance logged and the direction. 3 days after leaving the Canaries, Columbus began keeping 2 records of the fleet's progress, one for his use and a false one showing a shorter distance covered for the crew. So there would be no cause for them to fear sailing such a great distance from land. On the 10th of October, there was open grumbling among the crew, some of them demanding that Columbus turn back. But 2 days later, land was sighted, and the 3 ships had their first views of a world that was new to them, a lush tropical island with naked people Columbus christened Indians because he, at least, was certain that he was in the East Indies. After taking possession of the island, the natives called Guanahani, and Columbus renamed San Salvador, or Holy Savior, he met with the natives. As he states in his journal, "To some of them I gave red caps and glass beads which they put on their chests, and many other things of small value, in which they took so much pleasure and became so much our friends that it was a marvel. Later they came swimming to the ship's launches where we were and brought us parrots and cotton thread and balls and javelins and many other things. And they traded them to us for other things which we gave them, such as small glass beads and bells." Precisely where this first landfall took place is still a matter of considerable controversy. Some 15 of the 700 islands, islets, and keys of the Bahamas have been named as first landfall site. In 1987, Doug Peck, a retired Air Force pilot with more than a half-century experience in both air and sea navigation, retraced the route in his 31-foot sloop, the Goonie Bird. Following the journal's compass headings and distances faithfully, Peck found himself at the time of landfall northeast of San Salvador. Columbus's detailed description of his San Salvador and his subsequent explorations of the islands he visited are vital factors in determining where the first landfall took place. The admiral made meticulous notes of geographic features and the island's flora and fauna. As he states in the journal, "Here and in all of the island, the groves are all green and the verdure like that in April in Andalusia. And the singing of the small birds is so marvelous that it seems that a man would never want to leave this place. And there are flocks of parrots that obscure the sun, and birds of so many kinds and sizes, and so different from ours, that it is a marvel. And also there are trees of 1,000 kinds, and all with their own kinds of fruit, and all smell so, that it is a marvel. I am the most sorrowful man in the world, not being acquainted with them." The natives also told Columbus of a very large island to the south. Convinced the island must be Japan, he sailed south and found Cuba, taking possession of it in the name of his sovereigns. From Cuba, the route through the Bahamas led him to a large and fertile island he found so similar to Spain that he called it La Isla Española. Later renamed Hispaniola, today it comprises the countries of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. In centuries to come, Hispaniola would become a prosperous center of European commerce and trade in the Caribbean. But on the first voyage, It gained notoriety as the final resting place of Columbus's flagship and 39 of his men. On Christmas Day, the Santa Maria ran onto a coral reef off the northern coast and could not be saved. When Columbus returned the following year, none of the men was found alive. Upon returning to Palos after 224 days at sea, Columbus was given a hero's welcome. There were grand processions and a royal reception at the court in Barcelona. In his official report to Ferdinand and Isabella, Columbus writes about his successful enterprise to the Indies, promising in his own words to bring them in future voyages all the gold they could want, spices, cotton, and as many slaves as they can order, and 1,000 other things. The 42-year-old Columbus was at the peak of his career. He must have signed his new name, the Admiral, with great pride. Christopher Columbus's return to Spain from his epic-making first voyage to the New World was one long triumphal procession, from the welcome on the docks of Palos to Seville and Cordova, and then Barcelona, where Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand gave him a royal reception. The Admiral of the Ocean Sea, Viceroy and Governor of the Indies, was at the summit of his career, the peak of his popularity. He had no problem gaining the enthusiastic blessing and the backing of his sovereigns for a second voyage. It was a formidable undertaking. 17 ships, the greatest fleet that had ever crossed the great waters, and they departed from the important port of Cadiz 14 months after the first voyage had been launched. Columbus had drawn up plans for the continued exploration and exploitation of his newfound world, and he was charged by the monarchs first and foremost with the conversion of the natives to Christianity, ordering that they be treated very well and lovingly. He was also to establish a trading post, similar to those he had visited earlier, that of the Genoese merchants at Chios off the coast of Greece, and that of the Portuguese off the coast of Africa. A third objective was to explore the large landmass of Cuba to determine if it was in fact part of the mainland of Asia leading to Cathay, to China, as Columbus had reported. On September 25th, 1493, Columbus, Captain General of the Armada, departed on his new Santa Maria, alongside the old reliable Nina, heading again for the Canary Islands, but then sailing a more southerly course, seeking a shorter passageway between New and Old Worlds, wanting to make new discoveries in the islands described by the Indians. Sailing 2,600 nautical miles, average speed 5 knots, the Armada sighted land the second week in October. Columbus again proved himself to be a master navigator, and he named the first landfall Dominica because it was first sighted on a Sunday. From Dominica, the Armada sailed north along the western shores of the necklace of mountainous islands known today as the Lesser Antilles, discovering Guadeloupe, Montserrat, Nevis, and St. Kitts, given that name by Columbus because the distinctive double-hump mountain resembled a man carrying someone on his back, just like his own patron, St. Christopher. By the 19th of November, the fleet was sailing along the southern coast of another new land not found on the first voyage, a large island the natives called Boraquin, and which Columbus christened San Juan Bautista, St. John the Baptist. Today, it is the island of Puerto Rico. The Armada then headed for Hispaniola and anchored across from where the settlement of La Navidad had been established after the grounding of the Santa Maria the previous year. Columbus went ashore and was horrified to find death and destruction instead of the foundations for his trading colony. He abandoned the site and sailed east, eventually finding what he thought would be a suitable location for discharging passengers and livestock and setting up that colony. It was a sorry decision. The site, which he named La Isabella in honor of the Queen, was ill-suited to settlement. Low-lying, marshy, with no adequate supply of fresh water, and no usable harbor, but with swarms of malaria-carrying mosquitoes. That was Columbus's new capital of the New World. Shortly after Columbus returned to Isabella, he departed for Cuba to determine if, in fact, it was part of the mainland of Asia. Leaving his brother Diego in charge of the increasingly unsatisfactory situation in Isabella, Columbus took 3 ships and spent 5 months sailing around Cuba and discovering the island of Jamaica. He made the crew sign a sworn statement that Cuba was part of the Asian continent. Columbus fell ill during the last stages of this exploratory voyage, but during his absence, his brother Bartolomeo had arrived in command of 3 caravels to provide much-needed provisions. But the situation remained critical. There was ever-increasing dissatisfaction with the rule of the Columbus brothers, and Columbus led another expedition into the interior to subjugate the Indians in the Cibao. And in the process, he enslaved hundreds of them, sending back from Isabella 500 to be sold in Spain. Some 200 of them died en route, while back in Hispaniola, hundreds more were dying. Of the estimated population of the island when Columbus arrived, some 300,000, a third perished by the end of Columbus's second voyage. A few years later, only a fifth remained, and by the middle of the century, no more than 500 survived. To complicate matters, a great storm, which the Indians called a hurricane, struck Isabella, destroying several ships. The sturdy Nina escaped. From the timbers of those wrecked and cast ashore, a new one was built, the first such ship constructed in the New World. The 50-ton caravel was christened the India. Columbus returned on the Nina, just as he had done after his first voyage. But his arrival was nothing like that of 1493, and not at all similar to the send-off he had been given. He was still welcome at court, however, and 2 years later he was placed in command of 6 ships, departing in June 1498. From the Canaries, 3 of the caravels were sent directly to Hispaniola, laden with provisions for the desperate colony, and Columbus took the other 3 south along the African coast, sailing first to Cape Verde and then across the ocean due west, making landfall, another instance of navigational genius, at the 3-peaked mountain island he christened the Trinity, Trinidad. From there, he explored the coastal regions of what he eventually realized must be a very great continent, as he wrote in his journal. An otro mundo, an other world. He also wrote that it must be the terrestrial paradise. But Hispaniola was closer to a hell than a Garden of Eden, even though the trading colony had been successfully moved from Isabella in the north to a site selected by Brother Bartolomeo on the southern coast at the mouth of the Ozama River. The new city, Santo Domingo, was in turmoil. Soldiers under rebellious commanders were looting the land. The Indians were being mercilessly exploited, and the Chief Justice Columbus had appointed was leading a full-scale revolt. Columbus petitioned the sovereigns asking that a competent arbiter be sent to Santo Domingo to assess the situation and help him put down that revolt. But when the royal emissary, Francisco de Bobadilla, arrived, he put Columbus and his brothers in chains and assumed the duties of governor. It was the low point of Columbus's life, an incredible fall from grace and the pinnacle of popularity in just 7 years. The captain in command of the caravel taking him back to Spain offered to remove those chains, but Columbus refused. And when he arrived at Cadiz on October 30th in the year 1500, he was still in chains. 6 weeks later, Columbus was received at court, where the monarchs restored his income and rights and his full titles, but he had been effectively removed as viceroy and governor. Nicholas de Ovando was named governor in his place, and in February 1502, Ovando departed for his new post with a grand fleet, 30 ships and 2,500 men. Ovando moved the city to the other side of the Ozama River and started an ambitious building program, constructing the Western Hemisphere's first monastery and cathedral, the first university, the first mint. 2 months after Ovando's fleet sailed for Santo Domingo, Columbus departed, somewhat more modestly, with a fleet of 4 caravels. But before he sailed, he completed his Book of Privileges, a long listing of the various rights and titles awarded him by the Spanish monarchs. 1 copy he left with his son Diego. Another was sent to the monastery of Las Cuevas, and 2 were sent to the Bank of St. George in Genoa, which is where a copy is kept today in the mayor's magnificent office, in the pedestal of a Columbus bust created for such safekeeping. A few years later, Columbus compiled a mystical book of prophecies, collecting biblical passages which he believed were connected to his discoveries and could predict even greater exploits. He sent a copy to Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, but they never took the trouble to read it. But they did listen to his request for another fleet and granted him the use of 4 caravels, each about the size of the Nina, to explore for gold and silver, pearls and other precious stones and spices. But he was absolutely forbidden to take any slaves. Columbus's main interest was in finding a passage to the Indies, a strait between Cuba and the South American continent he had found on his 3rd voyage, the kind of strait Marco Polo had sailed between China and the Indian Ocean. But there was no passage to India. Instead, the coasts of the present-day countries of Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama, and foul weather, hurricanes, hostile Indians, and nothing but frustration in his efforts to establish a trading post. All his ships were lost, and for a year he was marooned on the island of Jamaica with 115 members of his crews, half of whom mutinied. When he returned to Spain, after 2.5 years at sea, after the most disappointing of all his voyages, he was a broken man, ignored at court, where Queen Isabella died 3 weeks after his return. A year and a half later, he was also given the last rites, going out on the final tide on Ascension Day, May 20th, 1506. Columbus should always be remembered, if not revered, for that magnificent first voyage, for that courageous crossing of uncharted waters, sailing westward, ever westward. He knew not what wonders he had wrought, but history now has righted the record. In truth, he deserved the title Admiral of the Ocean Sea, and in truth, he should continue to bear that title forever.
Coming up now, answers to study questions for the great explorers, Columbus. Columbus and most mariners of his day determined direction using a compass and the North Star. Distances were roughly estimated, and time of day was measured by a half-hourglass. 3 objectives of Columbus's second voyage were to convert the natives to Christianity, to establish a trading post, and to determine if the island of Cuba was part of the mainland of Asia. La Isabella was a poor location for establishing a colony because it was marshy with no adequate supply of fresh water, no usable harbor, and infested with malaria-carrying mosquitoes. For follow-up reading, members of the American Association of School Librarians and Assignment Discovery suggest The Mysterious History of Columbus by John Noble Wilford. For additional reading, consult your library's card catalog and the Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature.
The preceding program is part of Cable in the Classroom, a service of the cable television industry and your local cable company.
Next week on Assignment Discovery Social Studies Edition. He may have lost the White House, but his spirit soars undefeated. Now simply Citizen Carter, this former president still strives for peace, helps house the homeless, advocates for the environment, and champions the cause of democracy around the world. Jimmy Carter continues a life of service. That's next week on Assignment Discovery. To the Video Bulletin Board with timely listings of events, resources, and opportunities for educators. The National Council for the Social Studies has issued an official position statement on the Columbian Quincentenary. The statement addresses the contemporary relevance of 1492 and highlights 7 important facets of related history. For more information, write the National Council for the Social Studies, Member Services, 3501 Newark Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20016-3167, or call 202-966-7840. Embark on a voyage of discovery with The Great Explorers Christopher Columbus video series. The 6-part series with a teacher's manual presents compelling insight into Columbus's epoch-making voyages. The Columbus Dictionary, Columbus Annotated Guide to His Life, and a poster and plaque collection are also available. For more information, call or write OmniGraphics, 1-800-536-1536.
Welcome to the world of the Discovery Channel Interactive Library. Now the whole class can explore topics in depth, or students and teachers can use the Discovery Library for special research and presentations. With just basic equipment, a Laserdisc player equipped with either a remote control or barcode reader, you can tap into a cross-referenced learning system and answer your students' questions with vivid images they'll never forget. Add the optional software for Level 3 and see how fully interactive Discovery learning can be. Level 3 offers a complete informational database and makes brainstorming and developing lessons a snap. A most exciting journey into the world of learning. For more information on the Discovery Channel Interactive Library, call 1-800-621-2131.
To tackle the mystery of the decorations.
Okay, I think this is from yesterday, right? I think this is R24.
It's not a particularly big spider.
Mm-hmm.
The small spider has spun a small decoration.
It probably has some growing to do.
Will it help her trap insects?
Yeah, go on.
During the hour, this spider catches several bees and an unusual delicacy. A large grasshopper, still alive, struggling to breathe through the thick silk. This fly has been trying to escape for several minutes. Finally, it's bound by just a single strand. The spider is not responding. Then the fly gets entangled again. The struggle is over.
Oh my gosh. What a mess. Look at this.
Big interception here.
The verdict that emerges from hundreds of these maps is unmistakable. Decorated webs catch more insects.
What these studies are showing is that they're really doing fantastic things, that they're decorating their webs with brightly colored silks to lure insects to them, to attract insects to the web.
What is it about these decorations that makes them so attractive and so fatal to insects?
Stand by for a minute while I get
Kay
some.
has a hunch. And to test it, she's going to take some pictures.
Ooh, perfect. No, perfect.
She photographs the web once in normal light and once with a special filter that blocks out all light except ultraviolet light. Ultraviolet, or UV light, is invisible to humans. But insects not only see UV light, they see it as extremely bright. The flowers of many plants, including these grasses, reflect UV light, so the flowers look even brighter to bees than they do to us. In fact, UV light is a kind of beacon for bees, drawing them to their food sources. So as they fly through the air, the bees are looking for any surfaces that reflect UV light. Maybe the silk the spider uses to fashion her decoration also reflects UV light, just like a flower.
All the visible light has been cut out.
And it's this hunch that led Kay to take these pictures.
Completely washed out.
Here is a high-contrast black and white version of how we see the web. The decorations stand out, but so do the spider, the leafy background behind the web, and the entire blade of grass in the bottom center. Both stem and flower are extremely bright. But in UV light only, the kind of light that bees are attracted to, almost everything fades away, except the decorations and the grass flower. This means that they both reflect UV light. In fact, in this light, the zigzag decoration bears an uncanny resemblance to the flower. Viewed through a special video camera which reads only ultraviolet light, the spider's strategy becomes clear. She's decorating her web to look like a flower, trying to fool hungry bees. But one more mystery remains. We know that spiders are meticulous builders. Day after day, they weave their webs, never varying the basic structure. But the decorations change all the time. Sometimes a single arm pointed this way, sometimes that way, sometimes 2 arms, or even 4. Even more baffling, on some days the spiders don't decorate at all. That makes no sense, since decorated webs attract more insects. Is this just random behavior, or are the spiders up to something? To find out, Kay will ask the bees. Assisted by Jennifer Moss, she sets up an experiment. A dish of sugar water lures bees to the site. But Kay needs to track the behavior of each individual bee. That's a problem. They all look kind of similar. Solution? Nail polish. Fortunately, these bees don't sting.
Gold top, dark blue bottom. We haven't had one of those yet.
Each bee gets its own individual marking, so it can be recognized later. Then Jennifer heads into the wild to find the decorations they need for the experiment. She carefully lays the decoration onto a piece of sticky acetate. A web strung across this hoop goes directly in front of the sugar water dish.
Are you ready, Jennifer?
Then it's decorated. The bees still want to get to the sugar water, but now there's a decorated web in their way. How will they respond?
Gold top, pink bottom.
Kay looks for the individual bees that she's marked. Here's the gold one.
Gold caught, gold left.
Jennifer
red
keeps
right,
track of what the marked bees do. Most of them get caught. But since there's no spider to finish them off, they all eventually escape. Do the bees learn something from this experience?
We think that flying into a web is pretty traumatic. It's kind of like if you slam your hand in a car door, you're not likely to do it again, because it's just a really strong signal that will help you remember in the future.
Yeah, avoid around. All right.
After getting caught a few times, the bees do learn to avoid the web. Here's a slow-motion replay. The gold bee, who's gotten caught several times in the past, now flies around the web. So the bees have learned to avoid a web that's decorated like this. But what happens when Kay changes the decoration by pointing it in a new direction, like this?
Blue top, pink bottom caught.
It looks like the bees are now flying right into the web, as if they'd learned nothing at all.
The decoration there. Caught, caught.
Maybe changing the decoration confused them.
Well, the idea is if the bees see the same decoration day after day, they may be able to learn to avoid the webs more easily than if the decoration's constantly changing. So that could explain why the spiders have evolved to spin variable decorations, why every individual spins a different decoration, and it's unpredictable.
The spider and the bee are locked in a life and death struggle. The spider comes up with a trick to trap the bee. The bee either catches on or ends up as spider food. And when enough bees catch on, it's time for a new trick, or the spider goes hungry. This is the battle of the hunter and the hunted, played out by individuals, but evolving over thousands of generations. New moves keep the hunters ahead, new counter moves keep the hunted alive.
That's it for this edition of Scientific American Frontiers. Be sure to join us next time for a rare and exciting look at science in the Middle East. From the pyramids near Cairo to the Bible lands around Jerusalem. From the rediscovery of ancient music to the latest research on newborn babies. You won't want to miss Frontiers in Egypt and Israel, so please come on back and watch.
GTE brings you more than the power of telecommunications products and services. A grant from GTE also brings you the power of a new world in Scientific American Frontiers. At GTE, the power is on.
For a transcript of this program, send $5 to Scientific American Frontiers, 70 Coolidge Hill Road, Watertown, Massachusetts, 02172. Please be sure to specify which episode you'd like.
This is PBS.
Next on Wisconsin Public Television, watch the adventures of a Spanish explorer on American Playhouse.
Our forecast for Wisconsin tonight, mostly fair skies and cold, especially to the north, some single digits possible, generally in the teens for low temperatures statewide tonight. For tomorrow, we'll see some more clouds later in the day with maybe some light snow too, flurries possible. High temperatures generally in the 20s. Dave Barber, Wisconsin weather.
Sunday night, Wisconsin Public Television presents two programs about human life, its growth and beginnings. At 6, a special 321 Contact talks about what kids want to know about sex and growing up.
Does urges mean you have to have sex? What does safe sex mean?
Through animation, music, and question and answer sessions, sex education experts tell young people about their bodies and development.
What we need to do is to reclaim our rights and obligations as our children's own sexuality educators.
Then at 7:30, Nova presents The Miracle of Life. Using sophisticated medical imaging techniques, the origin of human life is dramatically captured in all its miraculous stages. 321 Contact, and Nova. Sunday night on Wisconsin Public Television.
I am today announcing my candidacy
for President of the United States.
A tribe that lived by their own rules, driven by their father, a man willing to pay any price for power. Watch The Kennedys on The American Experience.
Sunday at 11 a.m.
You've traveled far and wide with nature, but this vast and varied landscape was off limits till now. Discover the incredible wildlife of the former Soviet Union in a stunning nature miniseries that's an event in itself, Realms of the Russian Bear.
An encore presentation Monday at 8:20 on Wisconsin Public Television. Friday nights at 7, medical consultant Dr. Ted Goodfriend provides answers to today's important health questions.
Don't miss Judy Garland and Liza Minnelli at the Palladium.
Wherever we go, whatever we do, we're gonna go.
Local presentation of American Playhouse is made possible by a grant from the Consolidated Papers Foundation Incorporated of Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin, and Four Lakes Color Graphics Incorporated, a full-color service separation and pre-press facility offering color-integrated electronic publishing services, Madison, Wisconsin.
In 1528, one of the most remarkable adventures in the history of the Americas began. The film you are about to see is an imaginative recreation of Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca's journey across the American continent. In the summer of 1527, an expedition of 600 colonists and soldiers set sail from Spain to conquer Florida. After hurricanes, shipwrecks, and attacks by hostile natives, 5 makeshift boats drifted into the Gulf of Mexico. Miraculously, Cabeza de Vaca's boat landed safely. He and a handful of survivors began an 8-year trek across the southern United States and Mexico to the Pacific coast. Cabeza de Vaca had come to the Americas to enrich the Spanish Empire. Instead, he grew to love the mysterious, vibrant, and complex native cultures he discovered on his amazing journey west. And now, American Playhouse presents a fabulous true story of adventure and conquest. Cabeza de Vaca. The presentation of American Playhouse is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the financial support of viewers like you, the National Endowment for the Arts, and by the Chubb Group of insurance companies, for over 100 years providing business and personal insurance worldwide through independent agents and brokers.
Resolution calling for a U.S.-led use of force to get aid to the starving in Somalia. That is the topic on Your Turn, which is coming up at 4 a.m. Eastern. Now, our number is 404-221-1855. And our question this morning, the question is, what role should the U.S. military have in Somalia? We hope you'll join us coming up in just about 15 minutes. That's the news at this hour. I'm Dave Michaels in Atlanta. CNN Newsroom is next.
Boris Yeltsin's shock therapy for economic reform comes under fire in the Russian Congress.
Despite limited opportunities, a Chilean teenager bears down and strives for a better life.
And Louisiana anglers try to bring back some forgotten casualties of Hurricane Andrew.
For Russia's leader, another test of wills with the nation's lawmakers. At stake, the career of his acting prime minister.
The battle is over what some consider Russia's radical economic policies. They were launched just months after the Soviet Union collapsed, leaving the former Republic of Russia a nation on its own, as well as the informal leader of a new union, the Commonwealth of Independent States.
Russia acquired that role following a coup attempt in the fall of 1991, when communist hardliners tried to overthrow the progressive government of then-Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. They failed largely because Boris Yeltsin rallied the people of Moscow to stand their ground.
Russians, in turn, made him their president. His first challenge, a smooth transition from communism to capitalism.
Now, part of that plan is coming under fire, and taking the heat is another reformist. But as CNN's Moscow bureau chief Steve Hurst tells us, he's fighting back with some straight talk of his own.
A flat-out challenge from the man running Russian economic reforms.
If we continue these dangerous confrontations between the two branches of power, we won't have to worry about choosing between an American or Swedish model of capitalism. Instead, we will end up looking like an African or Latin American country.
You couldn't put it much plainer than that, but after 53 minutes of explaining and cajoling, deaf ears seemed the order of the day. It was a defense of nearly a year of reform in Russia that has resulted in a 20% drop in gross national product and an inflation rate of nearly 2,000% annually. It probably also was a personal defense by a man trying to save his job as acting prime minister. And it looked outwardly very much like a contest between the Christians and the lions. Gaidar said Russian economic success now largely lays with conversion of the militarized economy to one that meets consumer demand, but threw a bone to the old military-industrial complex.
Of course, we don't intend to sell arms in regions of conflict, but there is no reason for us to abandon this important market. We've just completed a major deal with China for $1 billion, with India for $650 million, with Iran for $600 million, and with Syria and some other countries.
Both sides in this conflict have taken off the gloves in what has boiled down to a territorial power dispute between Boris Yeltsin's executive branch and the ultra-conservative legislature, elected in the days of communism and little inclined toward shock therapy economic reform. Old Soviet flags held aloft greeted Congress goers on the second day, a band of a few hundred communists shouting against Boris Yeltsin, claiming he had sold his soul to President George Bush. Police barricades kept the crowd off Red Square on Wednesday and separated from Yeltsin supporters Russian Cossacks on the other side, absent their famous horses, but resplendent of headdress nevertheless. President Yeltsin has offered a power-sharing compromise that to most smacks of old wine in new bottles. It didn't fly. His more straightforward prime minister didn't even pretend to negotiate. Take me and my reforms, he told the Congress, or leave me. A dangerous challenge these days, and one that could find Mr. Gaidar right out of work. Steve Hurst, CNN, Moscow.
Last week, in our series on the Cajuns of Louisiana, we visited one family that has built its life around the fishing industry. That family's livelihood was jeopardized this past August when Hurricane Andrew hit the southern basins of Louisiana, killing tens of millions of fish. But now some local fishermen are pooling their resources, trying to restock the Atchafalaya Basin with the depleted black bass. Paul Gates reports.
What is believed to be the largest fish kill in North American history was recorded right after Hurricane Andrew blasted through Louisiana last August. The storm winds stirred up the bayous and lakes, depleting oxygen, killing the fish. Tens of millions of fish were killed, among them an estimated 5 million black bass in the Atchafalaya Basin alone. But now the people who love to fish for the black bass are coming to the rescue. Ernest Gammon of Baton Rouge has been in hot pursuit of the trophy bass for 20 years. He and fellow fisherman Sid Sanders had an idea. If breeding-sized bass from other areas were transferred to the basin, it could help replace the lost fish during the spring spawning season.
The sheer numbers involved, if we get as many fish released into the spillway as we hope to get, and if we see the survival rate, which we are told that we can anticipate, we should see the equivalent of several million fingerlings released into the spillway by placing these few thousand broodstock fish.
Fishermen who want to help donate their breeding-sized bass catch at one of 3 locations where they are picked up by a wildlife and fisheries biologist on a weekly basis. The fisheries experts tag and release the black bass in the basin. The fish aren't released simply at random. The spots where they are turned loose are carefully chosen. The fish are placed in the areas that were hardest hit and in the areas where they will have the best chance of surviving to lay or fertilize eggs. Wildlife and Fisheries has gratefully offered full cooperation in the program started by Gammon and Sanders. It's a program that can and will make a big difference in the bass population in the basin.
Very much so. And, you know, this is the place that they love to fish. It's probably one of the finest places in the United States to fish. And they've really banded together strongly on this idea.
Gammon believes that ultimately the Louisiana bass fishermen can help Mother Nature do in a couple of years what it would normally take 5 to 6 years to accomplish.
75% of the paper produced in the U.S. comes from trees. If more people recycled paper, especially newspaper, it stands to reason fewer trees would be destroyed. And even though public interest in recycling is on the rise, many cities are having trouble making recycling programs work. CNN's Tony Clark reports on one city's solution.
The United States is being buried under piles of paper. Newspapers often make up 40% of what goes into city landfills, and cities are paying a high price for it.
Today, our cities are paying almost $100 million to dispose of paper, much of which could be reused.
25 states and the District of Columbia currently have laws or voluntary agreements to increase the amount of newspaper recycling. In Houston, city officials have joined a paper company in a 20-year project to recycle newspapers, to turn them into recycled newsprint, and sell that newsprint back to Texas newspapers.
It's a good partnership of the private sector and the public sector and the citizens who recycle the curbside.
The agreement calls for the city to sell all the newspapers and magazines it collects in its recycling program to Champion International. In return, Champion built a collection and sorting center and is building an $85 million plant which will take the ink out of not only the newspapers, but also glossy newspaper inserts and magazines.
That's part of the process that we have. We have a hybrid of a flotation and washing technologies, and the glossy coating is an essential part of the process. It helps to lift the ink right off the sheet of paper.
The de-inking facility is one of only about a dozen in the United States of its size, with the equipment to handle newspapers and magazines. The pulp from the recycled materials will be mixed with fresh pulp at Champion's mill next door to make recycled newsprint.
It represents a win-win situation for all of us, because we're going to protect our environment, but we're going to save our local governments and, in effect, our citizens precious dollars that we need so badly for other purposes.
Texas officials say joint projects like this can make recycling not only environmentally correct, but economically feasible as well. Tony Clark, CNN, Houston.
That's what I want to hear. I want to hear the grunt and groan.
How genuine. The success of a society is often reflected in the outlook of its young people. Well, in those terms, Chile has a lot of room for improvement. Today, only 7% of Chilean teenagers have the chance to go to college.
Marcia Tolosa is not among that 7%, but unlike many of her peers, Marcia believes limited opportunity does not mean lost hope. CNN's Lucia Newman continues our series World Democracy with a profile of a rather extraordinary young lady.
Like the majority of Chilean teenagers, 17-year-old Marcia Tolosa couldn't go to college. She'd wanted to study nursing, but her parents couldn't afford her university tuition, which would have cost nearly her father's entire yearly salary. But Marcia did not let that depress her, and instead enrolled in a hairdressing school. Still, she's aware that most kids her age react differently.
They feel rejected because they want to do things, but society doesn't give them a chance.
Marcia studies in the mornings. She likes what she's learning and hopes to one day have a large and pretty salon of her own. But as well as hairdressing, she dreams of getting married and having a family.
I want a family where there is affection and understanding, because I think the most important thing in a family is affection.
For now, Marcia devotes her free time caring for those who have no one to care for them. Every afternoon, after leaving the Hairdressing Institute, she does volunteer work at this center for children with family problems, babies whose parents can't afford to look after them.
These are children that have difficulties at home, that often have nothing to eat. They don't get enough affection or love. So I try to give it to them. I was taught to love, and so I teach them.
Marcia is keenly aware that her country has just come out of a 17-year military dictatorship and that poverty is still widespread. That's why she considers herself lucky to have parents that have taught her to be strong and push for what she wants.
I'm very fortunate because not all parents are responsible like mine. My father has been an example to me because he sacrificed everything for his children. That's how it's been since we were little.
Marcia, whose father works in a bakery, comes from a lower middle-class family, and she has 3 brothers and sisters. She prefers to socialize with them rather than other friends because she feels that her family still nurtures values that most other young people seem to have lost. It saddens her to see girls her own age who are already mothers or who have become drug addicts. But while she's critical of the Chilean youth, she doesn't put all the blame on them and says the main problem is the lack of opportunities, of alternatives for young people.
I wish they at least had the opportunity to study, which is the most important thing, because without education, they can't find work.
Yes, to be able to work is essential, but Marcia says the most important thing in life is to share with people, and she feels she belongs to a generation that has lost much of its values because of the lack of stimulation or family support. That's why, even though she doesn't have much money, she's grateful for what her parents have given her.
They've taught me many beautiful things. To treat people with respect, to have care and understanding in a family, even if there are problems. My values are to fight for what I want, to be responsible in my work and studies, to strive to push ahead and always help others.
Lucia Newman, CNN, Santiago.
The Space Shuttle Discovery, with its crew of 5, is now aloft in space, but we know little else about the flight. It's a secret mission for the U.S. Defense Department.
It's believed the crew has already deployed a spy satellite capable of monitoring troop movements in Europe and Asia. Like all shuttle missions, the Discovery had a spectacular liftoff from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And we leave you today with those pictures.
Roll maneuvers complete. Placing Discovery and crew on the proper air, engines at 100%.
His beautiful piano albums have sold in the millions. TV and recording star Floyd Kramer. Now, Heartland Music presents Floyd Kramer in an all-new collection of his most beautiful recordings ever. Floyd has a special piano style that makes every song so warm and relaxing. You'll get two beautiful albums. Smooth, easy favorites to today's most beautiful songs. You'll love these all-new recordings. But this special Floyd Kramer collection is not in stores. Please order now.
Order, call toll-free 1-800-257-1257 to save all COD charges and pay only $12.98 for records or cassettes or $16.98 for CD plus $3 shipping. Use your credit card or send check or money order to Floyd Kramer, P.O. Box 8250, Atlanta, Georgia. Remember, save COD charges by sending check or money order or use your credit card.